Andy and Mary Rachelski. They have a wonderful testimony about how God has brought them through many, many things. So without further delay, please warmly welcome your residents, Mary and Andy Rachelski.
What a beautiful crowd. Thank you for coming. I have to say we're nervous. And I also have to say that in our life experience, we've been in front of an audience of murderers and rapists, so you guys don't seem to be so bad. We're going to start out by saying a prayer that we found to be really helpful in helping us to relax and let the Holy Spirit take over. So we're ready? Okay. I am the place where God shines through, for He and I are one, not two. I need not fret, nor fear, nor plan. He wants me where and as I am. And if I be relaxed and free, He'll carry out His plan through me. So hopefully we'll be able to be relaxed enough to kind of go through this. Mary and I are in our 58th year of marriage. And we moved here to Merrimack Bluffs on January 23rd. It was not on our radar. We came to a tour of Merrimack Bluffs 2 days before Thanksgiving, and we found out that there were 133 people ahead of us on the waiting list. So after checking out a couple other places, we thought, well, we'll put our $1,000 down here, and it's going to be a couple years. And 3 weeks later, we moved. It was a challenging move. We had to, in order to do that, there were a lot of things that we had to go through before. Once we got here, by just bringing boxes over, some of our neighbors were kidding us about the cart that we were using being attached to us as part of who we were. We're into the 5th year of our Alzheimer's journey with Mary. She was diagnosed in 2016. And in 2018, here, why don't you show the book? Mary wrote this book. It's called You Gotta Believe. And basically, it's a autobiography, somewhat, of her life along with mine, the two of us together. And her main reason in writing the book was before she would forget the story.
Still remember it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I could still remember it.
Right.
And even then, I had to have some hope. So it's been an experience with this disease. It's a very polite disease. It's called the long goodbye. And usually, we have no idea what time frame we have, but I understand that people have been actually what's the word I'm looking for? Diagnosed. And 25 years later, they're still here, in body, not necessarily up here. So, and first thing I want to tell you is that what I've learned is that with this disease, names and numbers just don't stick. There's no continuity. There's nothing to hang it on to. So, and I call him Sam, and it's not his name. His name is, what is your name? His name is Andy. And we ended up, I remember how we ended up with these names when we were dating, and that was back in '63, I guess, whatever. And we were at my house, my parents, where my parents lived, and we were having some sort of a discussion, and the TV was on, and it was a Charlie Tuna commercial, And I remember him saying, "Sorry, Charlie, that's not good enough." And I went, "Well, Sam," was all I could think of, which was my father's name. And so that stuck, which is good, I guess, because half the time I do forget. And I think, "Hey, you" is probably kind of, yeah, I guess that's deflating. So, and I'm known as Squirrel because I get so easily distracted. And so,
Remember the movie Up? Have you ever seen the movie Up, the little cartoon movie where the dog is the talking dog and he's always going, "Squirrel"? This is Mary.
it
In
doesn't.
fact, we told that story to Chaplain Carla, and she gave us a little napkin here that's got squirrels on it, just to make sure you know which one is the squirrel. Okay. Okay, so getting into our story. Oh, one other thing we want to say is that we're going to try to keep this to 40 minutes or less because our bodies tend to freeze up after so many minutes, and we want to be respectful to our bodies, and we want to be respectful to you to not just drone on. So we're going to try to get through this in fairly fast time. So we're going to ask you if you just any comments or questions you might have, if you would hold off until the end of what we have to say. So Mary and I both came from kind of dysfunctional homes. Mary was sexually abused by her dad and her grandfather from the age of 5. And I came from a background where my mom, who just died last year at 106 and a half, she went through a divorce. Her parents divorced when she was a year and a half old, back in, that would have been 2015. And, 1915. And so her approach to mothering was to smother, because she really came from a really unhappy background. That caused us, both of us, really not to know how to deal with our feelings. But I found a solution. My solution was alcohol. And I started drinking when I was 16, and I drank for 27 years until I was 43. We both married in our early 20s, and we had 4 kids in between the years 64 to 68. We actually had 5 pregnancies in 4 years.
We lost miscarriage in the middle.
Right. And when our second son was born, I started college. And so I was working full-time and going to school nights, and it took me 5.5 years to get my degree. I was 31 when I got my degree. And Mary was stuck with 4 toddlers. Mm-hmm. You want to tell that story a little bit?
And I was going crazy because they fought. We had 3 boys and a girl in that order. And
you can't see it from here, I'm sure, but where you are, but that gives you an idea.
Yeah, but it's before and after. And they fought constantly. I mean, it was like a tag team. Mark would fight with Scott, Scott would fight with Matt, Matt would fight with Stacy, Stacy fight with Mark. I mean, it didn't matter who was fighting with who. You break up one fight here, and they go find another partner to start fighting with. And it took me what was forever to figure out that they were just looking for attention. And I didn't have the wherewithal or the peace of mind or anything to give them that attention. And they were, to them, negative reinforcement was better than none. And so that's why they were constantly, oh, sorry.
No, just pointing it out. Just
Okay.
tagging in with your squirrelness, that's all.
Okay. I tend to get off course. He gets in a rut. So it was with them constantly, day in and day out. And finally, it got to the point I was so crazed. And I don't remember what happened. Something happened in that time spirit that someone did away with.
Maybe a a news story or something? Or
Probably a news story. But anyway, I hit on this idea that what I was going to do is I was going to pile all 4 kids in the car, and I was going to take them for a drive, and I was going to then, give them, read, I was going to get them fed, plenty to eat and all that stuff, and then bring them home, and I was going to park in the garage, and I was going to read to them and leave the engine running until we all went to sleep. And that was the only thing that I could think of to get out. And the only thing that keeps them alive is that I finally got so pissed off at Andy that I told him my plan, and he said, that was a good idea, except that it won't work because we don't have a garage.
We had a carport, so somehow we all survived. So fast forward about 10 years of marriage, and as you can tell from our upstart, it wasn't, our thinking wasn't really clear. It was somewhat negative.
To say the least.
It was amazing we made it as far as we did, even to 10 years. But what happened then was the self-help movement started in our society, and there were rallies and motivational tapes available. There were a lot of motivational speakers coming to town, people like Zig Ziglar and Jim Rohn and Tony Robbins and so on, that were all coming in, and for $10 you can go to the arena and watch 8 presentations. It was amazing. And we started buying motivational tapes and started listening to them. And it slowly, gradually started to change our thinking from the kind of thinking, from our stinking thinking to a little bit more positive thinking. Fast forward another 10 years, and it's 1985, and I sobered up. I sobered up on August the 17th of 85. Finally surrendered to the fact that I could not control what was going on. And the 12-step program is a very, very spiritual program. It's very God-centered. In fact, there's a lot of proof that much of the 12 steps comes right out of the Bible. So this was 22 years into our marriage. Now, many marriages in alcoholic homes do not survive that long. So we're kind of an anomaly, the fact that we even made it that far. But one of the things that we learned from the 12-step program was not to do life by ourselves. I came from a background of thinking that I had to figure it all out myself, come up with all the answers, not show any fear, I got this. And that certainly wasn't the case. And one of the things about the 12-step program is the 3rd step asks us to turn our will and our lives over to God. And that's not something that happens immediately when you first get into the program. But the other thing that I experienced in coming into the program was unconditional love. I had never experienced a set of people that were so loving and so willing to put up with me the way I was and help me to get to a better place. Basically, the 12 steps, steps 1 through 12, you start out as a totally self-centered person, and by the time you get to step 12, if you do the work and continue to do the work, and it's a process to live by, you become other-centered. You start to think about other people other than yourselves. So one of the side effects, though, of that is that about 4 years in, first of all, when I stopped drinking, all the emotions that were already there, all of a sudden they came up big time, and I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. I was able to keep them numbed out for all those years, but I wasn't not knowing what to do with it. So I got depressed. And I went to a spiritual director that I was going to at the time, and he suggested a way to deal with them. He said that, you know, in dealing with depression, your best bet is to serve someone that cannot pay you back. So one of the first things I did is I volunteered at Cardinal Glennon Hospital, and I used to go in a couple of days a week in the evening, and it took volunteers to open the playrooms. The playrooms were not staffed by staff. The volunteers came in, opened the playrooms, and the kids would come and play, and we would play with the kids. I didn't know how to play with kids at the time, but it was a really, they taught me so much. The other thing that happened is that I got an invitation to go to a retreat at a prison. It's called a REC, Residents Encounter Christ. And why don't you tell the story about how I told you about that?
Well, we were laying in bed one night, and he was telling me that that they have these retreats, and that one of the guys was telling him all about it, you know, and I'm just listening to him, and I'm thinking, oh crap, it's something else that he's going to be able to do, and I'm going to be stuck with the kids. And you know, he's off playing with kids at Cardinal Glennon. Why don't you come home and play with your own kids so that I can get a breather, you know? And I was becoming very resentful and it's a good thing we didn't have a garage. It really was. God knew what he was doing. So anyway, he's telling me that, I can't remember the man's name, but anyway, he says he's asked me to go with him, and I'm going, oh, okay, well, another out for you. When do I get one? And then he says, I think I'm going to go with him. And the thing that came out of my mouth was, you're going into the big house? I want to go too. And then I said, who said that? He said, you did. And I went, because I didn't even know that it came out of my mouth, but it was like, it's probably a little late for this advice for you, but ladies, don't ever marry a firstborn. They are very self-centered, very selfish. It's all about them. Maybe I'm off topic, but you ever notice that? Those of you who did marry one, that's what the problem is. So anyway.
So tell them about your experience at the REC.
So
The two of us went on this retreat. It
Yes.
was a 4-day retreat in a prison. Go
So
ahead.
I walk up to the table that I've been assigned to, and there's this young guy sitting there, and he has tattoos starting at the neck, going all the way down to his fingertips. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? And I thought, okay, you said you would do this, so man up. And I will do that. I had four brothers. Well, I had 3 brothers, and the oldest guy who was
Right. Okay.
I have a whole other terminology for him. He was the firstborn. And it was like, it was
So that part right there.
so anyway, this guy just happens to be John the Baptist, John. And I remember saying to him at the end of the weekend, if I were to pick anybody in this room here to be who I would take as John the Baptist, it would be you. You know, and we had a preconceived notion when we went in there, thinking that these guys, you know, they had to be scumbags to get themselves thrown into prison. Not true. You know, and we really got to know these guys and get to know them well. And you know, they're just little kids that did something stupid, and the system, that's where you go. And then when they get in the system, you know, they've got a lot of COs that are standing around just, you know, a lot of them are on a
Power trip.
yes, thank you, power trip, and they really make it rougher on the guys than they have to. But, so,
Okay. Good.
okay.
So basically, that started a process for us where since 1989, we've been going into prisons. We started out by taking, we went on probably about 13 recs initially, and then in '94, we became official volunteers, and we started teaching classes in prisons. Rather than doing from the religious side, we decided that we'd do it from the therapeutic side.
Right.
To try to teach them things that they just didn't know about how to live life and not go to prison. So, and that's been right to this point. We just went for training 2 weeks ago to keep our status alive. So as you can see from that story, God has really taken us from a place of real misery to just a peacefulness and an excitement about life because of the fact that we've put ourselves into understanding why God sent us here in the first place, and that's to serve. So, as you might think, we're going to change subjects here, and we're going to have to do a little regrouping here. So, I wonder if we could just maybe consider a couple of questions while we do that. It'll just take us just a few seconds to do this. So, the questions we have, one of them is, have you ever had a wake-up call yourself? And what was it? What happened? And how did it affect you? So why don't you just take a few seconds to think about that, and we'll try to get ourselves organized up here for next topic. Okay, so
Did that.
you did already? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so now what we want to do is talk a little bit about children and grandchildren. How many of you are parents? Raise your hand. Thought so. Well, I'm sure you've all had some experiences with a growing family, and the one we want to talk about is an experience that happened to us when our daughter Stacy, the little girl here, turned 17. She got pregnant. And we went through a hellacious week that week. Mary took her to lunch and discovered the issue on Tuesday.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we're having lunch, and she says, I'm not very hungry. And I said, really? And she said, no. And I said, me being flippant, said, what are you, pregnant? And she didn't answer me. And I said, okay. What do you want to do about it? And she just started crying. And I said, Stace, we'll get through this. You know, it's not the end of the world. You know, so.
Okay. So initially we blamed each other, of course. You know, that's what you do as parents.
If you'd stayed home, if you'd been home instead of out,
Yeah, right.
where the hell
All
you
that.
were. Help me raise these kids.
You know, like I said, I was blessed with a spiritual director that guided me actually into AA in the first place, and then he was still on the scene when this happened. This is about 1.5 years after I sobered up, and so I went to him, and I was all upset, and he says, "Why are you upset?" I said, "Well, you know, my daughter's pregnant, blah, 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 all this stuff, you know," and he says, "Ain't it?" He said, "It's not the way you wrote the script. This wasn't supposed to happen." And kind of woke me up at the moment, but what I did, from his office, I called Mary and I said, call a family meeting for tonight. This was on a Friday. Go ahead.
So I said, I can't do that. They've all got dates. They've all got, one of them's going to a concert, it was just, everything was, it was all planned. They were all going. And he said, we need to talk. What ended up happening is that everything fell through. But it all fell through with the 3 boys. The girls, something happened that they couldn't make it. And it was like, this was something, something that God stepped in and said, don't worry about it. I got you covered. And so we ended up having this meeting, and we're sitting on the floor. The kids are lounging on the furniture, and we're having this family conference at home since they couldn't have this meeting with them.
And the 2 of us are bawling, and we're carrying on about how upset we are. And they're looking at us and saying, what's the problem, And, as hard as you try to teach your kids about character and how things are supposed to be, by the time they get to be late teens, they just throw all that up in the air, and some of it lands and they pick it back up again, and a lot of it they just don't, But the thing that was really cool is the three brothers surrounded Stacy and said, "We're with you, sis. We're with you." Now, the thing that kind of complicated this is that the next day, Saturday, an exchange student from Italy arrived to live with us for the next 10 months.
Shall we say a unique student from Italy?
So that kind of challenged us, as we watched our baby girl's tummy grow over the next, 9 months. Now, what's really cool about recovery and about how God works is that I shared this the following Monday at an AA meeting. And, I'm carrying on I'm whining about what's going on, and a couple of guys come forward and they said, "Been there, done that." And so what came out of that was that they connected us with a few other families, and for the next 3 months, it took a 3-month period, I think, but we met with each one of these families in their living rooms, and they just told us their stories. And from listening to their stories, we figured out what to do, and we figured out what not to do. There were a couple stories that backfired, so okay, we don't want to do that. And we made it through the period.
So what we learned from that, we learned 5 ways of not to do it.
Or to do it in some cases, too.
Right,
Yeah.
because not to do it the way any of them were doing it.
Right, exactly.
So anyway, I took her to an adoption agency, and so she's talking to the main woman there, and she says, the lady says, "Do you have any expectations as to what kind of parents you would like to find for your baby?" And she said, "Well, I want that they're Catholic. I want them to be cradle Catholics. I want them to be practicing Catholics, not just be name only. I want them going to church. I want them doing all." And the gal says, "Okay." And she says, "And I want this." And every time she would come up with something new, I'd go, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my jeez." Did you plan all this out before you got pregnant? And when she's finished, the gal says, "I know exactly who I've got for you." And she had a couple, and they ended up adopting him. And it was perfect.
So the next thing that happened was the baby was born in March. The kids named him Nicholas. And my daughter came to me in January and said, "I want to go to Lamaze. But Frank, my boyfriend, the father, just got a job and he can't go. Would you take me to Lamaze?" So Stacy and I went into a hospital and with our pillows and sat down with surrounded by a bunch of couples that were really excited about having babies.
Kids.
And we went through Lamaze. And I became her breathing coach. I was there when this first grandson of ours, Nicholas, was born. And what's really amazing about that is that our kids were born in that era, 64 to 68. Back then, they didn't allow the father to touch the baby until the baby was out of the hospital. We could look at it through the window, but I remember, this number 2 getting born, and as soon as she got in the car, I said, "Give me that kid," So for me to actually see a grandson, a child born, was an amazing experience. And 3 days later, the kids were vacillating about the adoption, but 3 days later, the lawyers came in. What was really cool about that night, or that day that happened when the lawyers came in, the lawyers were in with the kids signing the papers for the adoption. And Mary and I guess his mother, were out in the hall, and a nurse was coming down a hallway with a baby in her hand, and it was our grandson. It was our grandson, and she discovered that she couldn't get in, and then she said, you know,
We're not supposed to do this.
I'm not supposed to do this, but she let us hold our grandson for that period of time. And that was the last time we had a chance to touch him. So the really cool part of this story and how God works in our lives is that Stacy married a couple of years later. She ended up marrying an alcoholic. She had a daughter, Samantha, and Samantha was just a lovely, wonderful woman, a child, and grew into a woman. Unfortunately, we lost her a couple of years ago at the age of 24 to drug addiction. Her father had quite an influence on her. She had birthed a child, Carter, our great-grandson, who was 3 years old when she died, but she had not really spent much time with him at all. He was pretty much being taken care of by both sets of grandparents. And our daughter, the same daughter that had adopted out at 17, she and our son-in-law made the decision to adopt him. Now they were 50, or she's 50. She'll be 53 this year, and so she's got a 6-year-old when she had already reached empty nest time in her life. And the really cool thing about this is that she came to us and she says, God gave me a do-over. So things can work out, you know, and along the lines, now we're going to switch to one last subject, and again, we're going to take a little pause, but I'd like you to think about a couple things about your own kids, and that would be, how did you deal with a crisis in your family? And can you think of a significant conversation that you had with your kids where you felt moments of grace or maybe even felt moments of regret? Okay, so we're the party. Okay, so it's gonna be okay. Okay. You ready?
No. That would brain dead.
Costco story in the bathroom.
Oh,
Okay. Okay.
I love this story.
Subject number 3, Alzheimer's. We were diagnosed 5 years ago in June, actually, of this month. Initially, very scared, very down, fearful when the world's going on to us now. You know, God's really, I'm not sure that we felt God at the time.
No.
Right at the moment.
No.
At that moment.
But he was
But then
still-
Mary had an experience that she wants to tell you about. Go ahead.
Okay, you gotta imagine this. I'm sitting in a ladies' room, in the restroom, in a stall, in Costco's, South County, and I hear this voice, and it says, "So what are you gonna do about this?" I've just been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And I'm thinking, this is a solid wall here. I look over here, I look underneath, I see no feet, no shoes. And I'm thinking, where did this voice come from? And after a couple of minutes, it says, you can either let this scare the hell out of you, or you can have fun with it. Because I was considering standing up on the toilet seat and looking over, and I thought, one of two things are going to happen. One, either I'm going to fall in the toilet. I love that laugh. Or two, I'm going to get arrested. And so I just sat there and I thought it for a minute and I said, and then my little kid, my little kid inside me, her name is Sunshine. She loves having fun. And we've all got a little kid in there, and if you haven't found your little kid yet, you need to check it out. They are pistols. So, anyway, I said, she's going, I want to have fun, I want to have fun, I want to have fun. I'm going, yeah, me too, you know. So, anyway, I said, let's go tell Dad. So we go outside, he's outside the restroom, and I said, okay, you're not going to believe this, but we were just in the bathroom talking to God. He's going, yeah. And he said, about the Alzheimer's. I said, yeah. He said, we can either let it tear us apart, or we can have fun with it. He's going, yeah. And they said, Sunshine and I decided we want to have fun. And I could see the relief. It was like, oh, thank God, you know. I don't think we've stopped laughing since I was diagnosed. I mean, it's just silly as crap, you know, and he'll say something, did you do that or that? And I go like, no, I forgot. And I go, and he'll go, imagine that. You forgot something? And I go figure. And it's just, or, you know, he'll say something and I go like, remember me? I'm the one with the broken brain. And it's just, and it has been, and I remember having an experience shortly after being diagnosed, and I was laying in bed in our room, and we've got this dresser that's at the foot of the bed, and it's got 2 vertical mirrors. And I imagined, I could almost see God sitting up there on the dresser talking to me. And I think I got the idea because somebody was telling about a story that their mother had 2 chairs in their bedroom, and one was hers for her God time, and the other one, none of the kids were allowed to sit in it because that's where Jesus sat. And I said, that's what I felt like he was sitting up on my dresser, and he was talking to me, and he's going, this is not the end of the world. And I'm going, okay. And I said, but while you're up there, couldn't you just scoot around and dust a little?
Okay, so moving on so we can get done on time. So basically, you know, our attitude's been one of, we're not dying with Alzheimer's, we're living with Alzheimer's, okay? It's just a different attitude. Initially, and we've taken a very proactive approach to the disease. Initially, we got caught up in the conventional medicine era where those doctors are basically saying there's no cure. And we got in, they suggested we get into a study. We got into a pharmaceutical study. It lasted with Eli Lilly, and after 18 months, they canceled it because they weren't going to make any money on it. And that's when we discovered that 99.6% of the studies that have been done have failed. What we started to do is to educate ourselves about Alzheimer's and start to look into the latest research that's out there. Because conventional medicine doesn't adopt the latest research. It takes many years for research to finally hit conventional medicine. And we discovered that Alzheimer's is a lifestyle disease. It starts 20 to 30 years ahead of time before the symptoms start to show up. It has to do with, they've actually identified 36 plus factors that contribute to Alzheimer's. And if you think about a roof that has 36 leaks in it, if you try to fix one leak, you still got a leaky roof. So you got to deal with a lot of multiple things. We found functional medicine, a homeopathic doctor, their approach to medicine is to take a look at the whole person, all the systems in the person interacting with each other. And we found out that diet, exercise, sleep, cutting out sugar was a really important factor, and we started doing that a couple of years ago. One of the things that our doctor did is he did a toxic metal test on Mary, and where lead, and you know, lead was taken out of gasoline and paint a long time ago because kids kids were eating, you know, the dust and so on and having brain issues. Where lead is supposed to be less than 2, Mary was at 66. And the doctor said, how in the world did you get so much lead in your body? Because lead stays in your body unless you actively take it out. So tell them how you got it.
Okay, we went to parochial school, so we walked back and forth to school when we were kids. And we cut across the filling station because it was shorter. I love the smell of gasoline. So every time, oh, you too? You might want to have it checked. Okay, because what happened is I would go and I would hyperventilate every time across that parking lot just with the smell of gasoline. Well, gasoline gets in your body, it doesn't leave, the fumes, and that lead in there.
The lead, yeah.
And so I've been having, you know, chelation things done every, whatever, I don't know what.
Pretty often, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, her lead level has gone from 66 down to 30s, to low 30s, so we're making progress there. Another just couple of things that we're doing is we're doing cognitive stimulation therapy. We found an occupational therapist whose specialty is to exercise the brain. And so twice a week, Mary meets with her on Zoom, and she's not only really working hard with Mary to exercise Mary's brain, but also she keeps track of, she does the testing, the cognitive testing. So we know whether, on a regular basis, whether Mary's staying steady or not, and she is. She's staying real steady right now. The other thing is to reduce stress. And why don't you tell them this thing, how you reduce your stress here at Merrimack Bluffs.
Oh, this is really cool. But there's one that I realized this morning, one of the things that I'm gonna have to stop, we've got, I don't know if you guys have Alexa, you know, that little thing that you can ask her to turn on the radio or whatever. We go round and round every morning. I'm gonna have to get rid of that bitch. She's driving me nuts.
I guess we're gonna cancel Alexa.
She is the dumbest broad. I swear. You ask her to play, you know, upbeat music, and it's just going, are you kidding me? It's what you call upbeat? Well, but anyway, what?
That was a squirrel, by the way.
Yeah, sorry. But the thing is, when we found this place, and we were here, we were
on the tour.
Okay.
We were on the tour back in Thanksgiving when this happened. When you
Okay.
went out onto the deck.
And I was out on the deck of this apartment, and I saw this hill over there it's all green. And I said, it's kind of like a mountain. And I thought, oh, that is really cool. And then I happened to look up, and I see these huge birds, and they're just hang gliding. I mean, they're not even flapping their wings. They're just going, and they're not running at each other. There's no crashes up there, you know, and it was so peaceful. And I thought, wow, if we end up in this place, I'd sure like to end up in this apartment. That's exactly where we are today. And I knew I was going to say that, and I get goosebumps every time I say it.
So she enjoys looking at the turkey vultures flying over Mount Rushmore.
They're very cathartic. So I'm hoping that I'm not the only one that's out there. You know,
Okay, so we're, we ran into 45 minutes. I was hoping we wouldn't, but that's it. Okay, so in conclusion, one of the things we want to share with you, Chaplain Carla has been just so wonderful. She's really helped us kind of just stay settled and everything else. But one of the things that she did is she came up with an acronym. And you know, one of the things that Mary just mentioned is that we're approaching this thing with laughter. So her acronym for laughter is, L is for lighten up, A is for attitude, U is to unleash your tension, get rid of the stress, G is to glorify God, and H is to hold on to the stories. And we know that one of the reasons why we are sitting here right now is that we know that God wants us to serve. He's planted us in a new location and we want to bloom where we're planted, but we don't know how that's going to show up, so we thought we'd just let you know who we were, and that's all we have to say. Thank you.
And I want to get to know that guy over there. I love his laugh. That's it.
Ready to stretch?
Okay.
Okay, that's it. Thank you. You're welcome.
What do we?
If you have any questions, we're happy to answer anything that you might have.
Does anyone have any questions? We have a microphone here.
I got to stretch.
I'm under.